Hey guys, so I figured I'd make this video today. We've got the P320 coming up in news again. This time we're apparently just firing while in a holster while the Air Force service member was placing it down on their desk. Shot and killed them. I was watching Forgotten Weapons Part 3 video on this just a little while ago, and he brought up some points, and I think I wanted to just make a video and kind of chime in on some of that. Basically what he was saying was that there are a couple issues with the early gen P320s, one of which being the drop safety issue. Now, to my understanding, the reason that this happened was that the trigger shoe, the actual part where you place your finger on, was too heavy in mass, had too much mass, and when dropped with the rear of the gun facing down, the actual trigger weight through inertia would pull the trigger, causing it to fire. His second point was that, you know, if you have, because the trigger does not have a little safety dongle on it, that it's very easy to unintentionally pull the trigger, even if you're holstering it and, you know, a piece of shirt gets caught in your holster, in between the holster and the trigger, some kind of situation like that. You know, thinking about the way that these incidents have happened so far and the actual confirmed issues with it, especially the early guns, you know, he was saying for the second point that why they designed a trigger without a trigger safety on it in a lightweight trigger on a striker fired gun is, you know, that was a mistake, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. A lot of this could have been avoided if they had put a trigger safety dongle in the trigger. Now, I understand his point about maybe they were trying to make it where, you know, our trigger face feels better than a Glock or Walther or whoever that makes these triggers with the trigger dongle, but that would have solved, or at least helped to, it would have completely solved the first issue, because part of the reason that trigger dongle is there is for inertia. You know, if the gun falls in that way, that blocks the trigger from being pulled just from inertia. The second issue, you know, he brought up that maybe that would help prevent some of these issues of something getting between the holster and the trigger and pulling the trigger. I don't know how often that is happening, just because you know, it doesn't take much to actually pull that dongle on the face of the trigger, but you know, he could be right on that. What I do know is that in my opinion, you know, why you would design a light trigger pull gun with no trigger safety and no manual safety is beyond me. I mean, you would think, okay, a firing pin block should block it if the striker was just going forward without the trigger being pulled. But you know, that's one point. But the other point is that a lightweight trigger in any gun that's ever been produced in modern times, if it's a lightweight trigger, it's either single action and has a manual safety, like a thumb safety, or it has a trigger dongle. know, I'm a big fan of lightweight triggers. You know, one of my main carry guns is a Walther PDP with the dynamic performance trigger in it. That's a very light trigger. Feels great. You know, it's a great, crisp, short trigger with a short reset, just like Walther's known for making. But it's still got a trigger dongle and it feels fine. Every one of my ARs has a Geisley SSAE trigger in it. You know, those are like 3.5 pound triggers. But every AR also has a safety on it, a manual safety. I'm not a big fan of manual safeties as far as handguns go, because most carry guns nowadays don't have them, and you have to train and be used to turning that safety off every time you draw the pistol. It's just not what I use, really. But, you know, now the M17, M18 models, and I believe you can also get the 320 with, you know, you can choose to have manual safety on it. But the ones that are sold without a manual safety and that light trigger pull, I don't understand why that was ever an option. At least not for, you know, people that are doing you know, service jobs where the gun is maybe coming out in and out of a holster all the time, and you may end up in a situation where you're rolling around wrestling, you know, like say the police wrestling somebody. I mean, and you've got this light trigger in a holster with no type of safety, no trigger safety, no manual safety to assist in it not just accidentally going off. Now, we don't know enough information about the Airman incident to know what caused that, and I'm not going to presume to know. You know, I'm not one of Sig's engineers, and I haven't put my hands on you know, every Sig 320 that's out there, so I can't say until the investigation comes out. Obviously we'll know the details, or at least as much as they choose to divulge. But I just figured I'd get on here and give a little bit of my opinion on, you know, just my thoughts on how this situation could have been avoided. And you know, Ian was talking about how now there is no saving the 320 because of its reputation. You know, it may be perfectly safe, but because of the reputation it's now garnered, you know, I won't buy one, not because I know it's unsafe or that I know that it's safe, but just because there seems to be something going on, and I don't want to be at risk of an ND with, you know, when there's options out there like the Walther PDP, HK, you know, all these guns that are really nice and do the same thing, and don't, you know, we don't have constant stories of people saying they just went off. You know, again, sometimes, or a lot of times, those are bullshit stories where somebody has an ND, gets embarrassed, and just say, oh, the gun just went off. But if the way that this Airman story was told comes out to be true, where it was secured in a proper holster, and maybe even with the safety on, because I'm assuming it's a safety, a version with a manual safety, and still just went off, well, that's not good. So, you know, it's kind of like Ian was saying, why even chance it? Especially if you're somebody that's buying for a department, something like that. You know, you have a lot more options that don't have these issues, or seem to. And I'm not a Sig hater for sure. One of my favorite guns is my P320. I've got the Mark 25 version that I changed the slide out and put a red dot milled slide on. It's one of my favorite guns. It's sweet shooting, but you know, something seems to be going on with this particular design. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. If you have any thoughts or comments on this, go ahead and leave them down below. If you like this video, click like, subscribe to my channel, and hope to see you soon. Take care now.